The question is, how do you change people's perception of your business? How do you differentiate yourself from your competition to change the perception of your business so that people will want to spend money with you, so people want to spend time with you? The bottom line, so you can charge more for your services to more customers. That's what building brand value is all about. Now, I'm here to tell you, as intimidating as that sounds, and as futuristic now as it sounds, it's really a problem that's gone back for a long, long time. And I want you all to take a little trip with me, not just to a year ago, but to the 1740s. We're going to go to Leipzig, Germany, and we're going to meet with a guy by the name of Johann Sebastian Bach. Anybody know who he is? Okay, if you've heard of him, please raise your hand. And by the way, here's a rule. This is raising your hand, okay? This is what the dinosaurs did in Jurassic Park. Got that? So who's heard of Johann Sebastian Bach? If you haven't, you should raise your hand anyways, because you really ought to know who he is, right? So he was a very famous composer, but he really didn't become that famous until the middle of his life. He had to make a living when he was younger, and so he was a piano teacher. Well, he wasn't actually a piano teacher because pianos had not yet been invented. Johann Sebastian Bach was a spinet teacher. And as far as I know, a spinet is kind of a miniature piano. And a lot of the melodies and the tunes that later on became parts of his famous compositions were actually pieces of music he wrote to teach his students. One of them, probably his most popular piece, is a piece of music called Minuet in G. Some of you might have heard it. If you have kids who've taken piano lessons, any of you have kids who've taken piano lessons? Any of you have kids? Any of you know what kids are? Okay, good. If you have kids who've taken piano lessons, you have heard Minuet in G, but it's really important that you know it. So I had asked if there could be a miniature baby grand piano here for me so I could play this for you. Couple problems. There wasn't enough room on the stage, number one. And number two, I don't play the piano. So I thought instead, well, you know, he played a spinet, which was a miniature piano. I would bring a miniature spinet. And so I did. It looks like this. And I'm going to play Minuet in G for you. I always wish when I play this for audiences that my wife was here to hear people actually applaud. So thank you very much. Okay, so Johann Sebastian Bach, Minuet in G, we got it, right? So now we're going to go from 1740 to 1940. We're going to go from Leipzig, Germany to Vicksburg, Mississippi. We're going to go from Johann Sebastian Bach to my personal idol, Sonny Boy Williamson. Now, these two guys were about as different can be. Johann Sebastian Bach was short. Sonny Boy Williamson was 6'6". Johann Sebastian Bach wore that kind of red velvet Eddie Munster outfit with the knickers and the pilgrim shoes. And Sonny Boy had been to England where he played with the animals and the Yardbirds. He fell in love with English tailoring, and he would wear all black draped suits in the heat of the Delta summer. Sonny Boy Williamson wore a black bowler cap. Johann Sebastian Bach wore that gray wig. So they were real different, but they had some similarities. They both had three names, right? Sonny Boy Williamson, Johann Sebastian Bach. And they were both composers, Johann Sebastian Bach. We've spoken about Sonny Boy wrote lots of music that you've heard. It was appropriated, stolen, I think today we say sampled, by Led Zeppelin, by a lot of the groups of the 60s. And one of the songs he wrote is called Peachy Tree. Peachy Tree sounds like this. Thank you again. Now here's the amazing thing, and here's what we can learn from this. Both of those guys were about as different can be. Both of those pieces of music were about as different can be. But they both used the same 7 notes. If you remember The Sound of Music, Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. And that's all there is. 7 notes. And yet every piece of Western music ever written, uses the same notes. So as you look to differentiate your brand, as you look to build your brand value, I'm going to share with you 7 points that it takes in order to build a valuable brand. By the way, 7 points is all there is. You can look at any great brand out there, look at how they did it, look at why people remember them, analyze it, and you'll see that each one only uses these 7 points. And because we're in the marketing business and we want our clients to understand how simple this is, we made a pact with ourselves that each one would only be 3 words. So I know we have a lot of engineers and a lot of really smart people in the room, but I have to tell you, we have 7 points, 3 words. Even I know that equals not that many words. So there's not a lot for you to write down. I have it written down. I'll give them out to you afterwards if you want. But I want you to really internalize and understand these 7 points, because if you use them, they will change your business. The first one, the most important one, you heard Matt say, if you got phone calls, get up and take them and absolutely feel free. But hear this before you leave the room, okay? 3 words. All about them. All about them. Most of us, personally or corporately, are so busy talking about ourselves that we never stop to talk about our customers. But let's face it, our customers, what do they care about? What's in it for me? So there's a great joke. Gary Shandling, the comedian, used to tell it. He talked about wanting to go out with this girl for months and months. He was always afraid to ask her out. You know, he's very nervous and kind of skitterish. And he said at one point, I finally got up the nerve. I asked her out. I went and picked her up. My palms were sweating. I was all uncomfortable. The minute she got in the car, he says, I started talking. Because when I'm nervous, I talk. That's what I do. He says, I talked and I talked and I talked. And he said, worse, I talk about my hair. He said, when I'm nervous, I talk about my hair. And I did it for 3 solid hours. He says he didn't even realize what he was doing until she gave him a little clue, because at some point during dinner, her head went on the table. She just passed out. Well, of course, hitting her head on the table woke her up. She jumped up and he said, oh my goodness, I am so sorry. I know you're bored. It's my fault. I've bored you because I've been talking for 3 hours about my hair, but when I get nervous, that's what I do. I talk. He said, but you know what? I'm done. I'm done. I understand what I've done. I'm so sorry. I'm going to stop. I want to hear what you have to say. So I'm going to be quiet now, and I want you to tell me something. What do you think of my hair? And when we build our brands, that's what we do. We talk about ourselves, and we talk about what they think of us. And I'm not suggesting that any of you do that, but if you look at your competitions literature, I can promise you that each one is like the high school valedictorian speech. Well, then I did this, and then I did this, and then I did that. But I want to tell you how we did some work a number of years ago for Nike. And before we started the assignment, we did a bunch of research to learn about the company. Here's what I found out. Nike has not been around very long. They were created in the late 70s. It actually was 2 guys going to track meets and selling shoes out of the trunks of their car. But they realized they needed to grow. Now, there was a problem. Back then, we did not wear athletic shoes as fashion apparel. Today we do, but we didn't do it back then. And so Nike had to find out, how can we get people to wear our athletic shoes? So they did a survey. They said to people, when do you wear athletic shoes? People said, when I exercise. They said, okay, great. When do you exercise? And people said the same thing then that they say today. 3 times a week, elevate my heart rate to 80% of the maximum, 20 minutes a day. Anybody not hear that? Okay, we all know it. And so then Nike said, okay, that's when you do it, but tell me, when do you actually strap the shoes on and go out and do it? And here's where people said what most of you would say if I stopped and asked you, which is, well, I know I need to work out, but I had to be at this conference early in the morning, so I didn't have time. Well, I had to fly here last night. My flight got in late, so I didn't have time. What did everybody say? Why don't I work out? I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I'm too rich, I'm too poor, I'm too sick, I'm too healthy. Everybody had a reason. What did Nike say? 3 words. Y'all know it. Just do it. Just do it. Now, at the exact same time, Reebok had an ad campaign. Who remembers what Reebok said? Which pretty much makes my point, doesn't it? Reebok said, life is short, play hard. Life is short, play hard. Which means, life is short, you're going to die. Play hard, get off your butt and go do something. So here, Nike sounds like my grandfather, my Papa High. It's all right, just do it. And oh, you knew him, huh? And Reba, you know, I would say to him, oh, Papa, I don't think I can ask that girl out. Oh, it's all right, boy, chick, just do it. Oh, I'm going to fail my test. Oh, it's all right, don't worry. Right? That's my grandfather. Reebok, on the other hand, sounds like that guy, that coach we all had in 7th grade, the guy who wanted to be a Marine sergeant but couldn't, and he wore those long shorts and he wore the whistle. He used to call us maggots. We all knew him. Take it to the fence, drop and give me 20. Remember him? He said that to me a lot. You're going to die, and before you do, get off your butt and do something. Is it any wonder Nike became the greatest brand of athletic shoes, not in the world, but in the history of the world? And Reebok went into chapter 11. But here's the really interesting part. Nike didn't stop there. They continued to do research. And what did they find out? What percentage of Nikes do you think never ever see athletic activity? Very close. 78% of Nikes sold never ever see athletic activity. So clearly, what we're just doing is we're just sitting on the couch and we're just using the remote control exactly right. But we're wearing Nikes. And here's the secret. That's okay with Nike. Because if you're wearing Nikes, it means you bought Nikes. So my question to you then is, what do you need to do to find out and to make sure that your customer is having a conversation with you? Now, by the way, there's all kinds of technology today to do it. I mean, think about this. If I gave this presentation 20 years ago today, whatever I said here would probably have been said once, and then it would sort of dissolve. You would remember a snippet of it if I was lucky, or if you took some notes, and that would be it. If I gave this presentation 10 years ago, probably a week or two later, somebody would have called and said, hey, can we get a copy of the guy's PowerPoint? I didn't bring one, but if I had, and somebody would post it on the web, and 10 years ago, you could have downloaded it from the web. If I had given this presentation 5 years ago, somebody in the room would be blogging, and you would blog something about it. Good, bad, really depends on how well I do in your opinion of it, but you would have blogged about it. But today, how many of y'all are using Twitter? Okay, not enough of you. You're going to have to start. In fact, you should immediately start the minute you leave this room, I have to tell you. But if you're using Twitter, people are commenting on what I'm talking about and what the other speakers are talking about in real time. While I'm talking, someone's saying, at Bruce Turkel, that's my Twitter tag, at Bruce Turkel just said, blah, 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 and either after they're saying brilliant or they're saying, however you spell, but it's happening in real time. So my question is, how is your brand having a communication with your consumers, with your customers? How do they know it's all about them if you're not asking them and if you're not listening to them when they speak? The technology exists to do it, but the trick is to have the mindset to do it. Point one, all about them. Point two, hearts, then minds. Hearts, then minds. Make an emotional connection with your consumer before you make an intellectual connection. Now, I know this is an anathema to a lot of you because you're in the technology business, and people think technology is all about the intellectual side of the business. It's all about the algorithms. It's all about the business side of it. And you're going to say to me at some point, well, listen, we're not a B2P, not a B2C business, sorry. We're not a business-to-consumer business. We're a B2B business, business-to-business. Therefore, it's not about emotion of selling. It's about the intellect of selling. But I would tell you that every business, B2B or B2C, is P2P, which is people to people. And the person who's buying your services, the person who's buying your know-how, most importantly, the person who's buying your solution has someone to answer to, whether it's a boss, a supervisor, a stockholder, or a spouse. They're answering to someone, and there is an emotional decision for using your products and services. So let me tell you a little story. I don't know if you all know this, but I'm from Miami. That's where I was born in Miami Beach. That's where I grew up. By the way, for those of you who are from here and think it's humid here, You have no idea. It is absolutely delightful. It's like sweater weather here today. For me. So I was lucky in high school. My father gave me his very old car, and it was a convertible. And since then, I think I've had 14, 15, or 16 cars. All but one or two have been convertibles. I love convertibles. Put the top down, the weather is always beautiful, and drive around. So a couple of years ago, my lease was coming due. My wife asked me if I was going to get another convertible. I said, yeah, I think I am. Why? She said, well, honey, we have to have a talk. Okay, there's not too many married people in the room then. Because you understand there's two very different viewpoints of that statement, we have to have a talk. The male viewpoint is, why? We had a talk last year. The female viewpoint is, I'm going to talk, you're going to listen. And she says to me, are you going to get another convertible? I said, yes. She said, you know, I'd rather you didn't, because the kids are getting bigger and convertibles aren't safe. Now think about that for a minute. The kids are getting bigger. So when the kids were smaller, we didn't care. But now, you know, we paid for the braces and the private school, and they don't wet the bed anymore. They're kind of nice to have around. They turned out okay. Or they're getting bigger. Maybe she was afraid, like, you know, their heads would pop out of the top or something. And convertibles aren't safe. It makes sense. A metal top, a canvas top, but I've never flipped one. I mean, I live in Miami. We have no mountains. We have nothing to fjord or for. It's not going to flip, is my point. And my wife, by the way, is a neurointensive care nurse. She's getting her master's right now, then her doctorate, so she's obviously much smarter, better educated than I am, but it was an emotional decision, wasn't it? The kids are getting bigger, convertibles aren't safe. So I gave this talk, very similar to this. I was speaking in Boston at MIT. I came back from my talk, and my wife had to pick me up at the airport because I didn't have a car, because we had not yet agreed upon what kind of car I could have. So we're driving home from the airport. See, you all know what that meant. We're driving home from the airport. My wife is driving. I'm sitting in the car. We pass a billboard. It shows a convertible, beautiful convertible on the beach with the top down and the headline, 2 words. It said, tan safely. So I say to Gloria, I say, hey, sweetie, I didn't know they made a convertible. What if I get one of those? My wife is driving, and she drives like this, and she says, oh, yeah, that's fine. They're safe. Problem solved. Now, who was in the back seat with us and knows what kind of car was on the billboard? Okay, who was not in the back seat with us but knows what kind of car was on the billboard? A Volvo. Exactly right. Why? Because Volvo has been selling safety, 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 safety for as long as... And it's emotional, isn't it? Well, it's a safe car. I can put my kids in it. My wife will let me drive it. So now I had to find out, could I afford it? Did it get good gas mileage? Was it durable? Was there a dealership near me? Did I fit in it? Was the back seat big enough for my kids? Was the trunk big enough for, you know, all those intellectual things. But if I had just seen the billboard that showed the price, the intellectual information, or the gas mileage, or the durability, would I have even had an interest in the car? Absolutely not. Hearts, then minds. They understood that there are consumers out there who have these safety issues, therefore they will buy their products. Now, about 6 months after I leased the car, in the Wall Street Journal was an article, the 50 safest cars in America if you're in an accident. You'll notice it didn't say the 50 safest cars in America to avoid an accident. This was if you're in an accident. How many Volvos on the list? Anybody want to guess? One. How did you know? It was one Volvo, it was number 18, and it was the station wagon. Number 1 was a Suburban, number 2 was an Expedition. They didn't have Hummers then, but clearly the safest car is the one with the most metal around it. So since some of you said you were parents, here's my tip. It has nothing to do with my presentation, but if you're buying your teenager a car, as I see it, your 2 choices are either a school bus or a dumpster. Because metal is what makes these cars safe. The more metal around you, the safer you're going to be. Hearts, then minds. So I would challenge you to look at your marketing materials, look at your brand, and figure out, are you doing hearts then minds, or are you doing what I'm guessing you're doing, which is minds then hearts? Oh, we have this, we have this, we have this. We did work recently in the tourism industry for this beautiful, beautiful resort in the Caribbean. And you know what they advertise? That they have 2,817 linear feet of beachfront. Sounds pretty nice, huh? So can you imagine if I went there with my wife, and we're going to have our 25th anniversary coming up, and we went there, and we had some of those drinks with the little umbrellas in them, and we're having a wonderful time, and we got a tan, and I say to my wife, hey, sweetheart, I've got a great idea. Why don't we grab our drinks, take our shoes off, and when the sun is setting, let's go for a walk on 2,817 feet of linear beachfront. That would be real romantic, huh? Look at your materials and see where you're making that mistake. Or better yet, look and see where your competition is making that mistake, and then figure out how you can demonstrate to your customers and your potential customers the emotional benefits of using your products and services. Which leads us right into point 3, which is make it simple. Make it simple. I'm going to draw a little diagram for you. And I need some imagination. What I would like is for you to imagine that this is a canvas that a painter is going to paint on. And this is a block of marble, big heavy block of marble that a sculptor is going to sculpt. What are some of the differences between the two? Just yell them out. Tools, absolutely correct. The painter is going to use pens, pencils, brushes, charcoal, that sort of thing. The sculptor is going to use chisels, hammers, saws, big heavy things. Great. What else? Pardon me? Thought? Yeah, you're going to think about them differently, the whole concept of them, how you're going to paint what you're going to paint, how you're going to carve what you're going to carve. Exactly correct. Something else? The block is three-dimensional. I can even draw that. You're right. Sculpture is three-dimensional. Painting is two-dimensional. I mean, we have width and we have depth. A good painter, of course, will make it look three-dimensional, but you're absolutely correct. It's a two-dimensional medium. How about weight? Drop a painting on your toe? No problem. How about durability? How many paintings do we have from the Roman Empire or from the Greek Empire? But we have sculptures, don't we? How about materials? Canvas, wood, paper, rock, metal, clay. Anything else? Color. Paintings tend to be, not necessarily, but tend to be colorful. Sculptures tend to be monochromatic. How about this? Think about the way they're created. Think about the way they're created. Paintings are additive. A painter takes the material, the medium rather, and adds it to the surface. If they're as talented as I am, you get the Mona Lisa with her enigmatic smile, right? It's an additive medium. Now, sculpture, on the other hand, is subtractive. A sculptor takes his hammer and chisel, or her hammer and chisel, and removes a big section, maybe carves a hole in the middle, puts it on a little walnut base. If your name is Henry Moore, you call it Mother and Child, you sell it to the Tate Gallery, $10 million. They're exactly opposite activities. I was at a friend's house recently, a guy named Gary Kleinman. He's a sculptor, and on his mantelpiece, he has this incredible seabird that he sculpted. It almost looks, it's kind of abstract, you know, he didn't make all the details, but it looks like it's flying. You can see the motion. And so I asked him about it, and he said, oh, that was a piece of driftwood that I found. I was walking on the beach, and I found this gnarled piece of driftwood, and he showed me a picture. And the driftwood was all this gnarled, kind of bent, tortured piece of wood, and yet he had created this beautifully smooth, aerodynamic, it was like a Giacometti sculpture, very tactile. I asked him how he did it. How did he think? How did he think to carve this piece of wood into this beautiful seagull? And Gary said, oh, I didn't think about it at all. The seagull was stuck in the wood. It was my job to free it. Which I thought was kind of ridiculous. Until a couple weeks later, I was doing some research for my book, and I read a quote from Michelangelo when Michelangelo was talking about the David. And Michelangelo said, I peered into the rock until the angel, I looked into the rock until the angel appeared. Michelangelo's point was that the angel was already in the rock. And then I heard a story, it's been told about Picasso, it's been told about Rodin, but where one of their students walks into the studio and there's a giant block of granite sitting on the floor. And the student looks at it and says, Master, what are you going to do with this big rock? And the sculptor says, I'm going to carve a lion. And the student walks all the way around it. He's banging it, kicking it. He walks all the way around it. He said, how are you going to do that? It's going to be so difficult. You have to create a lion from this rock? How do you do that? That seems so hard. And the sculptor says, no, son, actually it's very easy. All I need to do is take this hammer and take this chisel and remove everything that doesn't look like a lion. And so as you create your brand, and I suggest to you that you should make it simple. We already know it has to be all about them, don't we? We already know it has to be emotional before it's intellectual. So once you figure that out, remove everything else. It's superfluous. Now here's the really cool part. Every ad you do, every brochure you do, every tweet you do is going to be web enabled. You're going to have a link to a website where all that data can be. So whoever wants to know the specific information, addresses, se habla español, how many different programs you have, how long it takes, all of that can all be on the web and people can drill down to it. But the brand itself should be like that lion. Remove everything that doesn't look like a lion. Make it simple. Which leads us to point 4, which is make it quick. Make it quick. And that leads us to point 5. I can wait for you all to laugh. Thank you. That leads us to point 5, which is make it yours. The best brands are ownable. Volvo owns safety. BMW can talk about being safe. Mercedes can talk about being safe. And in fact, as I told you, on the NHSTA, the National Highway Safety Transit Association's list, Ford and GMC were the 2 safest automobiles. And yet Volvo owns safety. So what as you differentiate your company, what are you going to own so people are going to know how to turn to you? Well, since I just gave you a car analogy, let me continue with that. In Germany, there are 5 car companies. There's Opel, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Volkswagen, and Audi. They all manufacture exactly the same thing. They all make cars. And what do cars do, really? They get you from point A to point B. Some do it quickly, some do it efficiently, some do it comfortably, some do it durably, but that's what they do. They get you from point A to point B. They make exactly the same thing. Opel sells a car called the Senator. Mercedes-Benz sells the C-Class. BMW has the 3 Series. Volkswagen has the Passat. Audi has the A4. They are exactly within 1 inch of each other in height, in length, in wheelbase. They weigh the same. They look the same. If you got it in kind of that pewterish, silver metallic color, they have leather interior. If you were inside and you were blindfolded, well, and hopefully you weren't driving, you can't even tell the difference. And yet the car companies need you to tell the difference, because otherwise, why would you buy one or the other? So right in the front, right between the headlights, they each use a circle. They put their logo. Opel's logo is a lightning bolt. Looks like that. Mercedes-Benz logo, we all know it. It's a peace sign. It looks like that. But stop for a minute and look at the logos geometrically. Opel divides their circle in half. Mercedes-Benz divides their circle into thirds. BMW, the ultimate driving machine, divides their circle into quarters. Now, Volkswagen did not divide their circle into fifths. What they did was they just took the Mercedes-Benz logo and flipped it over, and then they removed the vertical and replaced it with a W. And then in my warped sense of branding, I think the guys from Audi came along. They didn't know what to do. They said, the heck with it. They just took the other guy's circles and added it. So even the logos are the same, right? But they all stand for something very, very different. So what does a Mercedes-Benz stand for? Cost of repair? Okay. So high maintenance? Obviously told by someone who knows. Okay, what else? Status, good. I heard luxury, good. What else? You know, nobody ever wants to say this, even in our tough economic times. Yeah, they're expensive. Anything else? Anything you want to add? Reliable. Okay, great. Fantastic. So a Mercedes-Benz then is reliable, it's expensive, it's luxurious, it's statusy, and it's high maintenance. Yes? We agree? Now, wouldn't you say if I applied these to a BMW, BMWs are high maintenance, they're statusy, they're luxurious, they're expensive, and they're reliable? Sure they are, but they're one more thing, right? Fast. Exactly right. They're sporty. They're high performance. So Mercedes-Benz might own a lot of these attributes or share them, but BMW has added performance. Now, here's where building brands gets really exciting. I said to you earlier, all about them was the key, but actually I think this is the key. Here's what you can learn that can change your business overnight. The attributes of the brand become the attributes of the consumer. So a Mercedes-Benz driver is a reliable person, is affluent, is luxurious, is status conscious, and is high maintenance. And a BMW driver is all those things, but tends to be a little younger, a little trendier, a little hipper. In fact, demographers call BMW drivers PDBs, which is not what you think. It's not people driving BMWs. It stands for people dressed in black. Because you know all the hip, trendy people wear all black. I'm a recovering blackaholic, by the way. I'm wearing gray. And they say every year gray is the new black, green is the new black, brown is the new black, but we all know that black is the new black. So the brand itself becomes the way a consumer tells the world who he or she is. We used to say, you are what you eat. We now say, you are what you consume. You are what you consume. People tell the world who they are or who they want to be by the brands they consume. Look at it this way. Because of modern technology, there's a rule that every couple of years, a product gets smaller, more powerful, and less expensive. And that works across almost all technology. So if you think of cameras, for example, cameras were invented right after the Civil War. They used to have those Conestoga wagons. That was the camera. And then in the Edwardian period, the cowboy days, the 1890s, you've seen the movies where the guy sets up that giant bellows camera and they hold up that thing and then it explodes and they take the picture with the drape, right? So a camera was that big. And then you had Brownie cameras, box cameras, Instamatic cameras, and they got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Until now, cameras are so small that they're the size of credit cards. We can't tell the difference between them, so marketers have figured out how to get us to buy new ones by making up a word called megapixels. Right? Your camera has 5.1 megapixels, but my new camera has 8.2 megapixels. I win. Even though none of us know what a megapixel is, what it does, nor have we ever seen one. Or how about phones? Remember the first cell phone you saw? No, that was the first cell phone you bought. The first one you saw was that box. Remember? And it had a strap, and it came with a curly cord and like a regular phone handset on it that sat on top. And you needed either a push cart or a dog to carry it. And then if I answered the phone, hello, and it was for you, I'd have to go with it because it had that cord. That was the first one you saw. The first one you bought was the Motorola. And to show you the size of it, the nickname for it was the brick. Exactly. Kind of tells you how portable that was, right? And then they came out with the mini brick. And then there were a lot more, and we had the StarTech and all these other ones and the iPhones and everything else. Until today, phones are so small, they have names like Razor and Sliver. And they're so small that the word razor doesn't even have any vowels in it, right? A razor is RZR, and a sliver is SLVR, because they're so small. And yet, one thing in the world gets bigger and bigger every year. And it's the keys to these cars. You remember when a key was a flat piece of metal? and someone say, hey, leave me the key under the mat, you can actually do it. That saying is going to completely go out of our lexicon. You're going to say to a kid, leave the key under the mat, and they'll say, hey, Matt, come here. I mean, they're not going to know what it means because it'd be like the Princess and the Pea. The mat would go like this. Now, why is it, if technology makes everything smaller, why are the keys to these cars so honking big? Anybody know? For computer chips. Well, how about a phone called a Razr has the internet, my address book, and the camera in it. It's got computer chips, and it's bigger than the key. Exactly. It's got a logo on it, and it doesn't fit in your pocket. So you have to wear it out. In fact, the next time you go to a business lunch, I want you to look and don't do it here because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but when you go to a business lunch, I want you to look at the other tables and see how people tell the world who they are with what we call your digital stack. You have your phone, you've got your key, you've got your glasses, right there. So everyone can see all the brands that you carry around that would actually be hidden and people wouldn't know about. Think about what the car does when you go out to it and you press the button on your giant key. What does it do? Lights flash. And thank you. It whistles and it winks its eyes at you. It flirts with you. You walk out, you hit the giant button, and the key goes, here I am. You're successful. You have a Jaguar. Over here, I'm your Lexus. Hello. Now, I was somewhere, and a person told me, that's not what that's for. It's so you can find your car. I said, okay, lady, look. If you can afford one of those cars, and you don't remember where you parked it, but I said, but you know what, I'm open-minded, so I want you to try this. The next time you go on a trip, when you pull into the airport, don't pay attention to what animal garage you're in. You know, like in Miami, we have the dolphin garage and the flamingo garage. I was recently in somewhere, and they have like the badger and the elk. I think in New York City, they have the cockroach and the rat. But don't look at those things, and then don't see what color floor you're on, and don't memorize the letters on your space. Just go on your trip. When you come back, I want you to walk in the garage and press the button. You ain't gonna find your car. It's so it doesn't fit in your pocket. So people know what kind of car you have. Has anyone noticed how watches have gotten enormous lately? I finally figured out why. I thought it was because of aging eyesight, but I mean, you don't need a watch the size of a kitchen clock to be able to see what time it is. It's for Bentley salesmen. You see, what used to happen in the Bentley dealership is the Bentley salesman would be behind the desk. A guy would come in the door, which was back there like the door here, and the Bentley salesman could tell instantly if the man or woman who walked in could afford a Bentley, because they could tell by what they were wearing. And so if the person looked prosperous, the Bentley salesman would get up and walk over and try to sell a car. If the person did not look prosperous, the Bentley salesman did not have to get up. But now, the person who buys the Bentley and the person who washes the Bentley wear exactly the same clothes. They're both wearing sneakers, jeans, and a t-shirt. Now the difference is the sneakers that the guy who's buying the Bentley wearing are Gucci's or Prada's or Ferragamo's, and the jeans are like made from the tongues of unborn lizards and, you know, harvested in Japan. And he's wearing $800 jeans, but from a distance you can't tell. So he straps on the big giant watch so that the Bentley dealer doesn't have to get up and do extra work. Remember, we used to say you are what you eat. We now say you are what you consume. Brands become a badge that a consumer tells the world who he or she is. If you ask me what I'm doing this weekend and I say I'm going on vacation, and you say where, and I say South Beach, it says something very different than if I say Orlando. Both in Florida, both have sunshine, very different, right? Neither one is good or bad, mind you, but they're very different. So then my question becomes, are your customers bragging about the fact that they use your products? Are they using your company as a benefit to the people who give them money? Because that's what it's all about, isn't it? It doesn't really matter what you or I think. It's the people who give us money. I mean, you heard Jeff say it earlier about the certification. You don't want to go out and get it yourself, but you can say my partner has this certification, which means that the Lighthouse1 brand makes your brand stronger and better. How do you now make your brand improve your customer's brand. Make it yours. What are you going to own that will set you aside from the competition? Point 6, all 5 senses. All 5 senses. Most of us who do marketing, for some reason, believe that most marketing decisions are made with our eyes and our ears. How do I know that? Because if you look at most media that people use, those are the only senses that it engages. Television, eyes and ears. Radio, ears. Newspaper, magazines, eyes. Billboards, eyes. And yet, a million years ago, when we were hunter-gatherers on the Great Savannah, we used all our senses in order to find food, to find mates. Our sense of smell was probably our most important sense. We used it, well, think about what happens when 2 dogs meet each other. Think of the ritual they go through. They're using their noses, right, to determine who's the alpha dog, who's the beta dog. They figure out their entire social situation by sense of smell. Now, in polite human society, we don't usually go around and sniff the butts of people we meet. Although there are bars on South Beach where that's appropriate. If you want to know where they are, let me know, or Twitter me, and I'll give you the information. We don't do that, and yet this sense of smell is so powerful. It's so powerful that it can control our thinking, but we don't use it in marketing. I want to tell you a personal story, and it's a healthcare story. My wife's grandmother has lived with us for the last 7 years. She has pretty severe Alzheimer's, but my wife was not willing to put her into a facility. And so we had a woman who came during the day, a nurse. My wife was a nurse, as I told you. And we got the routine, and we figured out how to take care of her. My kids were real good at it. Everyone knew what to do until about a year ago, Abuela fell down, and she broke her leg. And she's 92 years old. She completely, what's the right word, suffers from dementia. So she would not follow the procedures. We couldn't train her the things she had to do. She wouldn't even stay in her bed. We decided we could no longer take care of her in our house. We had to go find a facility to put her in. So we started looking at nursing homes. We started looking at hospitals. We started looking at ALFs, all the different facilities that could take care of her. And one thing I noticed as we went into them, the instant turnoff was not the facade, because who really cares, was the smell. And I don't mean to be gross here, but you'd walk into them, and you know what they smell like, the ones that smell bad. And luckily, we have the resources to be able to afford a good place for her. So we'd walk into these, and the minute you would smell it, we didn't even have to keep our appointment with it. You know, if it smelled, we left. So then we went into a few that smelled good, meaning you could smell the disinfectant. And we started to think, oh, that's good. You see, they're cleaning. It smells good. It smells fresh. It smells clean. Until we walked into a facility that didn't smell at all. And then I realized if everything else worked out, that was the right place for Abuela, because the place that didn't smell meant they weren't covering anything up. It dawned on me all of a sudden, my house doesn't smell. Well, when my 20-year-old son is home, it does, but most of the time, my house doesn't smell. Your houses don't smell. They don't smell from disinfectant. They don't smell because they're clean. And so disinfectant, what you think smelled clean, does not. And no matter what else they did, the marketing, the certifications that they had hanging on the wall, the doctors that we met, it didn't matter. If the place smelled, it was a no-go decision almost instantly. And people make decisions that way. Now, your business is a little more difficult. I understand. Software does not smell. It doesn't generally make sounds. But there's a whole experiential environment when you're using software. There's a whole experiential environment when you're dealing with the people that you send to your customers' offices or the way you answer the phone. One of our medical clients, a company called Medcare in Miami, in Florida rather, they just changed the way they answer the phone at all their clinics. They used to say, and you know, they do all the stuff that you've heard about, make sure you're smiling before you pick up the phone, right? Everyone's heard that, and they do that. But they used to say, welcome to Medcare, my name is Jenny, how can I help you? Now they say, welcome to Medcare, my name is Jenny, do you need to see a doctor today? Think about how that changes everything they do. It tells you as the patient, which they call customers, by the way, that we're here for you. It's not a matter of, okay, send your papers in, wait in line, blah, blah, blah. But it also tells all the employees, We're running a different business here, because if the person says, yes, I do, they better be ready to do it. So they're using hearing, but they're using it in an emotional way to change their business. So once again, my suggestion is that every experience that your customer has with you, every touch point, is where you build your brand. And that brand is built through what people see, what they hear, what they taste, what they touch, what they smell. All of us who are salesmen in the room know that there's no faster way to get past a receptionist than to bring a box of donuts, right? It's true. You bring that box of donuts, they're happy to see you. You may not get in the first time, you may not get in the second time, but sooner or later, you're going to get in because you're the guy or the woman who brings the donuts. So as you think about building your brand, think about adding sensual components to your consumer experience. By the way, I want to make it very clear, I said sensual. I did not say sexual. I don't want lawsuits. I want to be invited back, okay? Think about how to add sensual cues to the experience that your customers have, because all five senses is a critical part of building a brand. The last point, I cheated. I told you each one was 3 words. It's really only 1 word, but I said it 3 times. The last point is repeat, repeat, repeat. Once you figure out what your brand is, how to make it emotional, how to make it all about them, how to make it ownable, how to make it simple, how to make it quick, how to make it sensual, you say it over and 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 over again. Because only when you've said it that many times is your consumer even beginning to hear it. Now, ironically, repeat, repeat, repeat does not give you the right to be repetitive.